Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. I think this is episode number 66, which is a powerful number also, like Route 66, and it's two sixes. It's better than three sixes. It's not 666. We'll have to know come what do we do with that. Um, and what's really interesting for me in this show is I'm talking to people who then are friends of theirs are calling me up or saying, can I be on the show? Or I'm inviting them to be on the show because of interactions that they've had. And they've been courageous enough to do it. So the ball is starting to expand from stranger to stranger to stranger. The world is starting to grow bigger. Um, I know a little bit about my guest today, Todd Faulk. Todd is in the same organization as my friend Jennifer Haack, who I hadn't spoken to for a long time, and we had recorded her show, and we thought we had recorded her show. The recording didn't come through. And so then we had to have a whole nother conversation that was different because we don't want to have the same conversation we had a couple of days ago. But Todd is from that same place. He's from the Aveda Institute in Dallas, where they teach. It's one of the premier beauty schools in the country, with one of the premier companies in the spa industry for teaching that. So I know a little bit more about him than I normally do, and you can see behind him, it's right there, right? But I don't know that much about him. All I know is he's been super kind in the moments between Jennifer's interview and now. And it's a real honor to welcome him. Todd, welcome to 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Todd Faulk. I am actually sitting in my classroom at home. So during this whole epidemic we've been teaching from home. And as I was sitting up here, I was like, well, I'm going to talk about school and teaching and all various things about that. I was like, so I might as well just sit up in the classroom. So why not? So this is my at-home classroom here. So actually, when we started our whole stay at home, teach from home, everybody at home, this actually, you can't see it, but this actually is a master bathroom. So when I was trying to figure out where do I set up, and you have to have a mannequin, you have to have your screen to teach on, you have to have everything, lighting. And so this actually worked out really well. So this is a closet. I took everything out of the closet. Even I took the mission statement off the wall at the school, put it on the wall. Jennifer Haack, my director at the Institute, said, take whatever you need to make your learning space just like it would be at school. So I did just that. I am a ambassador of Aveda. So you see all the retail here. It allows me to teach product from home. If anybody else logs in, if we're doing anything else, I have the whole entire product line up here. So it just seems so perfect just to, talk to you all about school and teaching in my at-home schoolroom.
And we may not even get to that anymore, which is fine. What's important to you, Todd?
What is important to me? I think the thing that's important to me is giving back. And we hear that a lot about giving back and giving. And oftentimes it's even hard to talk about ourselves because we're so used to either doing interviews like this and interviewing other people, not actually talking about ourselves or yet the world around us. But what really brings happiness to me is being able to give back and actually see people take that moment and that light bulb moment that goes off, or that realization of maybe I thought I couldn't, but I can. So that really is what brings joy to my life.
I love that. In the course of I'm going to say millions, but it's probably not millions, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that I've spoken to in the course of my lifetime, I've seen something evolve within me. I've seen that there are people like yourself whose purpose, or it almost feels, these are my words, not yours, but they're purposeful in their desire to give to back to the world, to give
Hmm.
something to the world, to teach, to help them. And I'm not saying this is true of you. I'm asking this. I'm setting it up as a question. How are you at receiving?
Receiving can be challenging.
Yes.
Receiving can be challenging. Oftentimes, when you receive a compliment, you take the compliment, but then sometimes you don't pause and actually absorb the information and actually take the compliment. You
Yes.
hear the compliment, but you don't take the compliment. So receiving sometimes can be challenging. It's really a practice that I found of you have to actually make yourself pause and actually take in the moment to get the moment versus just keep going through it.
So, can I share something with you that I observe?
Absolutely.
And again, if anything doesn't make sense, just throw it right into the trash can, which I'm sure you
Okay.
have there. Okay. For people who give a lot, one of the things I notice is their terminology is in sort of second person, you, as opposed to I. Like when I just asked Todd, and I want for the audience to notice what they notice about themselves as we're having this conversation, so that you're a part of this conversation. When I asked Todd how is he at receiving, he said receiving can be hard because sometimes you don't do this, or sometimes you get a compliment, or
Mhm.
as opposed to the more personal aspect of that, which is sometimes I don't take the time to get that. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Oh, totally, totally. And I think I caught myself in that of making it more of um, multiple versus singular.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so in this hour or so that we're together, I would love to invite you to have this moment to be a singular experience.
Okay.
This is a moment for you to understand. This is I talking to I about each other. If that works, does that work?
It totally works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if you weren't able to help other people, if you weren't able to give back to other people, what would be important to you?
If I were or were not.
If you were not able, if there was nobody else in the world, if there was nobody else that you could give to, what then would be important to you?
Oh man, if you were not able to give back, what other would be the other option? So obviously you would have to look within yourself. There's no one else, so therefore you have to look within yourself. And I guess we have to exclude our pets also, because that would be something else
That's
besides
something else.
yourself. Yeah. So my thing, what I do for myself is I find a point in time to meditate, and I think a lot of us hear meditation. We're like we hear that all the time. Meditate, meditate. You know, well, how am I going to meditate? Um, meditation can be just the point of just thinking of yourself, just like we're speaking of, versus
Yeah.
what do I need to do? How can I do this better for someone? How can I explain it? Meditation can be more of how would I want to do things different?
Hmm.
How would I want to do something for myself and a opportunity to do something different? So therefore it's more of myself.
I want you as an audience to watch how beautiful Todd is, because he's allowed me to move him from a place of where his purpose is, which is giving back to a world, and really being here to help a world see and grow together, to this place of, if I strip that away from him, and how how beautifully open he was to allowing me to do that process.
Mhm.
One of the things I noticed in writing the book that's over my left shoulder, the Mosaic, was the sense of how beautiful the words were that were given to me to write the story. It's a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven. But the people he meets are not the rabbis and the priests and the ministers and the swamis and the gurus, or the medicine men or the shamans or the Aborigines elders. They're common ordinary people. They're the street worker and the trash man and the juice maker and the waitress and the gardener, and he wonders, why am I meeting these people? But he says, I'm here with them. I might as well take time to just listen. In listening to them, he realizes he never saw the person that they were. He saw the person he thought they were. And when we take this, when we take give the space to things to happen that we don't normally give space to happen to. We see a different world. And so, what I often say to people that I really am just understanding in these days now, I've always said the words of the story are beautiful. They tell a beautiful story. But it's really the space between the words that actually makes the story powerful. And I never really understood that. And today I just wrote a post on Facebook about how important space is, because space is what gives us the ability to let go of all the things that we don't have to have. So I really want to honor you, Todd, for coming into this space and
Mhm.
just allowing yourself to change direction a little bit.
Yeah, thank you as well. Thank you for guiding it.
Absolutely. What makes you happy?
What makes me happy? It goes back to others, and I have to pull myself away from that.
You don't have
What?
to. You can start there, but
Yeah,
already now I love what you're doing because
yeah,
already you're seeing. So what would make you happy if there were no others?
yeah. What would make you happy? And that really makes you think. You're like, well, I've never thought that way because I
Yeah.
guess I just don't think that way.
Yeah.
What makes me happy? What makes me happy um, is knowing that everything's going to be okay. It's that have that knowing in your mind that whatever happens in life, things are going to be okay. We don't know how it's going to happen. We know life in itself is, a mystery, I guess you could say. And so therefore we just know it's going to be a mystery. So we set ourselves up for it's going to be something. But I think it's knowing that whatever does come out of that, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that is what brings me peace. With then bringing peace also brings, I guess, what we call happiness.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And again, I want to just invite the audience to participate in this process with us because I'm having a conversation with Todd. I feel like we're in school, maybe because of the backdrop of where we are, right? And the school here for me, and I'm asking myself this question too. It's not that I'm just asking the questions, is how often do I allow my own self to experience the happiness of knowing myself
Mm-hmm.
versus the happiness of knowing things outside of myself? And what does that even look like? Like,
Yeah.
what does it feel like to actually have an experience of this human experience of being Danny Levin in this moment or Todd Faulk in this moment? And who is that person? And we put my conception, this is a question and a lob to you. It feels like we put so many parameters around ourselves that protect ourselves from actually being ourselves
Yes.
that we don't
Yeah.
even have a sense of who ourselves are.
Yeah. I think we don't even have a sense of who we are. There's, we I guess you could say we wear so many hats. There's
Yeah.
so many things we wear so many hats, and we see ourselves as this person and this person and this person and this. After a while, you're like, but who am I?
Yeah.
I am me. When I know myself and I look in the mirror, I'm me. But yet, who am I? If you took all those hats off and you had no more hats, um, who am I? And you're like, wow, I don't know.
I love your courage. So I'm going to ask you one more time, just for it could be the same answer.
Yeah.
What makes that guy happy now?
What makes me happy now? Um,
Excuse me.
what makes me happy is having content of who I am. Who I am is who I am. You know, there's all these different labels we have to ourselves. Um, there's all these different I am this, I am that, and I'm whatever. But I'm courage, I'm happiness, I'm optimistic. I would say if I have to say who I am, those words are basically kind of sums it up of who I am.
Yeah, and you can feel that in just our conversation.
Yeah.
You can feel all those words in our conversation, which is
Yeah.
really beautiful. So, all right, let's lighten it up a little because I've been, this
Sure.
is. Let's go into a lightning round and just make it a little bit easier. Um, are you a dog person or a cat person?
Oh, I'm a dog person.
Okay.
Yes.
Coffee or tea?
Both. I can go both.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a rare breed of people that do both. Most
I enjoy both, and I enjoy all different types of both. I like light roast, dark roast. I love green teas. I love matcha. I love black tea. It depends on the setting that I'm in of just what feels right, or maybe the gathering that I'm with of what's presented at the time.
Yeah,
Seems to be right. So I can say I can go both of that one.
love it. Um, junk food or organic?
I prefer organic. Yeah.
Fabulous. Um, exercise or stationary?
Uh, well, I guess yoga would be in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I love exercise. Yoga is my thing. Yeah. I used to be a yoga instructor as well. Loved it. So I would say somewhere in the middle. Depends on what class you're signing up for.
Gotcha. Um, I know both of these are really important, but I'm wondering what for you in this moment in your life is more important. Not in this moment in this room, but just this moment in time. Is it more important for you to have a platform where you can actually speak your truth and be heard? Or is it more important for you to create a platform for other people to speak and that you can listen to them?
I would say it'd be more so create a platform for others to speak. Um, yeah, and along with that is being able to speak and be heard to provide that platform as well. But if I had to go one way or the other, the intent is to provide a platform for others to find their potential, to grow, whatever it is for them, and then whatever it takes to provide that platform to get to that point.
Love it. It's so interesting because when I created this show, I was originally, when I wrote, when I finished writing my book, The Mosaic, I heard a voice say to me, "It's time for you to go out on the road and do what Mo did. You have to go from town to town, city to city, village to village, and sit in on street corners and in boardrooms and in hospitals and in jail, in prisons and in, you know, groups of hate and groups of love, and just sit and listen to what people are saying." And I
Mm-hmm.
was about to set out on my trip when COVID came 2 weeks before I was going to leave, and so the Jews have a great saying. They say, "Man plans and God laughs," and
Yes.
I think she was having a good laugh on me at that point in time.
Yes.
Um, but one of the big premises that I set out with was that I believe everybody has a voice, and it's important to hear everybody's voice. And yet, one of the data points that I'm gathering from the information that I'm getting from these interviews that I've been having, or these conversations I've been having, is that more people feel like they want to create a platform for people to be heard and listened to
Mm-hmm.
than feel that it's time for them to they want to have create a space to have their voice. Why do you think that is?
I feel that it is in order to give someone else a platform to see their potential and see things come out from them, there's joy in that for yourself. I can speak a little bit about when we started teaching from home. We started teaching from home, and I teach in the classroom, so I have curriculum already set. My other colleagues that teach on what we call it clinic floor. So you come in, you get your hair done, you are their study, you know.
Right.
So therefore, there's no guest to work on. There's nothing besides the mannequins. Therefore, they had to create curriculum. So in part of this, we have morning wellnesses. So we would do yoga classes. We would do meditation classes, which I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm doing this again. Didn't know I was going to teach yoga again, especially online with an iPad. So part of that was, let's find people to come and tell their story. So I would go to salon owners, our platform artists, other educators, other people out in the field, and just tell their story of how they got started. And the point is to tell their story of how they got started for our students. It was newly to school, I'm going to get out and open my brand new salon. It's like, okay, let's think about that process of that. Not saying it can't happen, let's think of the process of that. But it gave a lot of our salon owners, platform artists, the ability to come in and not teach a class, not do a presentation, which you get paid for, that's work, but to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
How did you start? Where was your motivation? What was some challenges you had along the way? What suggestions would you give? But that ability to give back to those people that are on stage all the time, but now they're in a whole different light. Yeah. And they would call me and they're like, but what do I talk about? I don't know. I'm nervous about this. I was like, you're nervous? You travel all the time. You're on the stage all the time. What do you mean you're nervous? You're now coming to beauty school talking to students about your experience, but it was a whole different situation.
Yeah.
And to see them open and to work with a company I work with, the Neal Corporation, the Neal family, the Aveda Institutes, and they supported it. It was just in this little classroom I had. I would put it on social media. My friends around in our other networks would see it and ask, how can we get that? Then we opened that up to all 17 schools. Went from this little space to 17 schools.
Fabulous.
So yes, you have to put yourself out there and make the platform. But the idea is to put those people on the platform and let them grow. And you just stand back and just kind of steer the wheel, but yet let them be the vehicle that drives.
Yeah.
And that is such an awesome opportunity. We're still doing it, not near as much as we have been. But when I think of that experience, that's how I think of that experience of letting other people have the spotlight and let them go from there.
I love what you're saying, and I love finding connection points with people that I didn't know moments before. And what this place that you're speaking of is so relevant to me, because in having these conversations with people, what I've realized is in setting up the platform for them to speak, it's actually created my platform.
Yeah.
Because I'm speaking and I'm sharing messages in my conversations, in the talks that I give, in the boardrooms that I go to, in the conversations that I have, of people who have shared their information with me, making a mosaic of my own belief systems and their belief systems that we can share in the same moment. So it's super cool. And I so get what you're saying. And I love that you're doing something similar to that, or have been doing something similar to that. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Have you felt like you fit into the world, or have you always felt a little different?
Oh, I've always felt different. I always felt different. And, as a young kid, it was hard. And I think as kids, it's hard. I mean, you're young, you're growing, you're trying to find your way. You're trying to, and then, mix in, family challenges that might be coming along with your own family and background. And at the time, you think you're the only one that has a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
Then you realize if someone doesn't have a dysfunctional family, that's really different. We all come from it. But I've always, as a kid growing up, I'm severe dyslexic. And as a kid growing up, it was really, really hard. And I grew up on a small farming community where, there wasn't really resources. There was either you were smart or you're dumb.
Wow.
And I was in the dumb category.
Wow. Which clearly you're not. Yeah, no, you can feel it.
Yeah, oh yeah. And you worked, of course there always will be emotion there. There's lots of emotion there. But that also is what draws me to doing what I do now.
Yeah.
And that's where the compassion comes from to do what I do.
Do me a favor, tip into, it's so easy to feel what you feel and bypass it because of how possibly uncomfortable it could be. But I'm so interested in what was it that brought those tears to your being in your eyes, and what was that emotion that you felt?
Oh, wow. I'll go through it again. I'll try to hold them back. I think it is whenever someone says that you're less than.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just emotion. It's not, I bring this up every time I talk about it. Anytime I talk about anything with compassion, it's compassion right there. It comes out. But I think it's whenever someone says you are less than. Well, what's less than?
Yeah.
And what defies less than? You know, but it is that feeling of, you're less than me, you're, whatever. And it's that kind of confusion. I think there's a lot of that compassion comes from that confusion of like, well, exactly what is that?
So can I challenge you a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, One of the things I realized, and I realized that it's a character in my book, The Mosaic, it's the gardener. And the gardener, and to make a long story short, it's because I don't want to just tell the whole story all the time. But he says when there's weeds in the garden and people notice the weeds that are in the garden, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And so
Uh-huh.
the best thing he can do as a gardener is he just removes all the weeds. And that's his job. He goes through the garden, and Mo comes to this garden and says, it's the most beautiful garden I've ever seen. And they're trying to figure out why. And finally, the gardener says, maybe it's because of what you don't see. There are no weeds in this garden. And so, um, if someone were to say to me, Danny, you're the stupidest black man I've ever seen, because, and you're also just fit and capable, I wouldn't take any offense to that, because I'm not lean, I'm not black, and I'm not stupid. But if someone were to say, you know something, you're an old fat guy and you haven't done anything with your life, that has some roots in me that are still sensitive. And those are things that I feel a little bit embarrassed about, a little bit ashamed about, a little bit not so good about. And so it isn't the voice outside of me that's talking to me, as really the voice inside of me that's talking to me. Is there a part of you that feels like you are not good enough?
There are parts of it that you think of, maybe I would not apply for a certain job because maybe I would be up for the task.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge of like finding, okay, you're not up for the task. Let's find another way to do the task, so still get it done, just in a different way. Um, so not good enough, I would say, as a child, because we're talking about growing up as a child. As a child, definitely not good enough. As an adult, it's not necessarily so much of not good enough. It's more of, how can I find another way to do what I need to do that maybe is different than others?
Hmm. So I'm going to ask you again, why would that bring up that much emotion?
I think it's just personal. It's a very personal thing. It's a very personal thing that um, that you've been attached to. It's kind of like going back to who you are. It's like,
Yeah.
in a way, you're not the dyslexic person, but then in a way, you are.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just work with it and find another way. And it's kind of like anything else. You got to there's good in everything. Find,
Yeah.
what does that bring up that maybe someone else that didn't have that challenge wouldn't really have that experience
Yeah.
to go through.
So we live in a very judgmental world, where
Oh
people
yeah.
that are slightly different than us get judged for being slightly different than us.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is, because one of the other data points that I've picked up, just your point of view, is when I ask people if they feel like they fit into this world or they feel different, probably 85% of the people have said, I feel different. One woman answered it beautifully. She said, no, I completely fit in. And I said, really, tell me about it. She said, oh, I fit in because everybody's so friggin' weird, and I'm weird too. And I'm as different as everybody else. So I fit into a different world.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. That's true.
but I wonder why, when we all feel different, we don't allow each other to be different. Like in a pieces of a mosaic, it's the different colors and shapes and sizes and textures that actually make the mosaic beautiful. Why
Hmm.
do we try, why do those of us who feel different try and make everybody fit in to a world that we don't fit into? Any thoughts?
Maybe it's just our perspective. we have a perspective of how things should be. And oftentimes we know we're not that perspective, but yet we judge others of the perspective that we think things should be, which means we judge others as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but we have this expectation or this thought of how things should be, and we put ourselves out of it. It's like, oh, well, I know I'm not like that, but
Yeah.
everything else should be. And
Or, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
no, go ahead.
I wonder if it isn't like a slightly different perspective, which is I feel different and I don't think I should be different because everybody else doesn't feel different. So when I see somebody that's different, I'm going to judge them and try and make them feel different because really what I'm doing is making my is attacking myself. But
Yeah.
it's easier to attack them in another person than in myself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are huge points. I mean, for the listener, just think about this. Just feel, how do you participate in this play of life? Do you open, are you okay with who you are and the differences that you represent in the world? Are you not okay with those differences? Are you accepting of other people's differences? And is your desire to make them fit in the desire really to make yourself fit in some sort of odd way? Just interesting, fabulous conversation points for you to think about as a result of this conversation. And I'd love your thoughts if you feel to comment on these things below.
Yeah, I love this conversation. It's interesting coming in this conversation, not really knowing what the conversation's going to be.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, let's talk about whatever we're going to talk about.
yeah,
And it's. I think if I was on the outside listening in, it's like, wow, like you can really put yourself into this. Like you can easily put yourself into the situation and think of
yeah.
yourself. Um, and it's a great conversation to have.
Thank you. Uh, would you say you operate more from your head or your heart?
Oh, I definitely operate from my heart.
All right.
I operate from my heart, and then I have to stop back and say, okay, let's, yeah. But yes, I guide with my heart, and then I have to make myself stop and think, and okay, is that okay to do it that way? Should we not do this? Yeah.
So what makes you stop and question that? What are the places where when you operate from your heart, because you're obviously a heart-driven guy, you can feel
Yeah.
your heart. What are the places that make you question whether that's okay or not?
Well, I think a part of it is you think of the content of maybe you're speaking. You have to stop and think. The words you're saying, how are they going to be articulated? So maybe kind of pause for a moment. And it sounds good in my head, but does it sound okay when I say it to you? So you got
Okay.
to stop and think about it. Or it could be in a business setting of like, okay, is this okay to do this?
Yeah.
Business wise, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do what you want to do. And like, wait, okay, I've got to follow the rules. Let's rein it back in.
Yeah.
Let's do it this way because we got to follow the rules. So I think with my heart, then I have to pause, pump the brakes and okay, wait. There's a protocol way of doing things. So let's do this the way the protocol says, so we don't get in trouble and we can get things done the way it's supposed to get done. But yeah, that's what makes me stop.
Yeah, and that would be specific, especially in the work that you're doing, which is teaching a formula of how to be a good Aveda beauty salon person, right?
Hairstylist, yes.
Hairstylist. Um, and I want to tell you a story if I can. Yeah, can I tell you a story?
Please, please.
I remember some years ago. You see, I don't look normal. I don't look like everybody else looks.
What's normal?
Oh yeah, normal is a little more clean shaven, suit and tie, all those types of things. And I remember being invited into a boardroom in New York, and as I walked past, I normally walk past the boardroom to see what's happening in there before I go in, and I just glance in, and I noticed there were three-piece suits and women in two-piece suits, but everybody was very, very, very formal. And I was in a t-shirt and jeans. And I walked into the room, and um, they were startled. They were like, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I'm here. I think I'm supposed to be here. This is the boardroom, and there's a meeting that's going on." And they said, "Oh, are you coming to take the trash before that meeting?" I said, "Yeah, and actually, in a lot of ways, I am, because I can already tell you guys have a lot of trash in your way of thinking, because this is a workshop on innovation. And what were you expecting? Were you expecting someone to come in that looks like you and thinks like you to teach you how to innovate or to work with you on innovation? And what would happen if a guy in a t-shirt and jeans was purposely suited that way to try and get you out of the box of thinking the way you think? What would that do for you? And they said, "Oh, this is going to be interesting." And we had one of the most fascinating innovation processes that I've ever done with somebody, because of how close-minded they initially were and how open they became through the process of just allowing yourself to be yourself and to come as you are, who you are, in the way you are, to do the work that you got to do. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea. I love that statement of, I think you probably all have a lot of trash. I think that probably caught them off guard
Mm-hmm.
of like, who are you? Are you the janitor? You know, we're about to have a meeting here. Can you, you know, go along? And you guys are in the trash. And I love that statement of, I think you probably guys probably have a lot of trash. Um, and it probably took them, you know, by surprise of like, oh, you're here as a participant.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. And I'm sure it probably shifted their mindset of, okay, let's have a different mindset. Like, there's a different way of thinking, thought, okay, what exactly are we signed up for? What are we here for? So probably the way that you showed up made a statement of what you were going to present, more so if you would have showed up dressed however you should be dressed, then your statement would have been just another presentation, another
exactly.
roundtable discussion of who knows where it's going to go type situation.
So, how could you be your heart-centered self in an organization which is heart-centered, but you need to create, you need to transmit data? And I bet you do it anyway. I bet who you are comes through every word that you say, because I can feel it in even our conversation here. Even if you're trying to communicate a teaching, you're still going to
Mm-hmm.
do it in the way you are, which is heart-centered.
Yes. So how different ways of that would look, like how, I mean, that I would say, I mean, it goes back to be who you are. I know we hear that all the time. You're like, well, what does that mean? Um, but try to be who you are. If you are that different person, be that different person.
Yeah,
It's okay, because everybody else is in their own way a different person.
yeah,
If you try to find out, well, in order to do this job, I got to do it just like this person did it. And then you find out that person didn't do that job the way they thought they would do the job, like someone else they compared themselves to, because they had to
right,
find ways.
right.
And you'll find a way to do that job maybe in a different way, but still get the same results. So, you know, it goes back to be who you are,
Yeah,
but be more authentic of who you are, and not be afraid of putting yourself out there and being there
yeah.
and thinking of, well, you know, my opinion doesn't count, or, you know, maybe I'm not going to say it right, or, you know, just, you know,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I love when a conversation circles back, because, again, part of the reason I'm holding this space in this room for people to be able to share their points of view is because their opinion does matter. And yet, when we want so badly to hold the space for other people to have their opinions matter, it sort of sometimes doesn't give us the space to actually feel like, what would happen if we celebrated the differences in life and allowed every voice to really matter.
yes,
And
yeah,
one of the things that I love about the school that you have and the school that you're a part of is that there are a lot of different looking people in that school. There are
a
a lot of
lot.
there are a lot of different people that come to that school. And what if fitting in, what if the way to fit into the world that we live in was to celebrate your difference rather than to fit in, to negate your difference?
Yes. Yes.
That makes sense?
Total. And, and that's one of the beautiful things I'm thinking of now is, I love the company I work with, the Neil Corporation with the Veda Institute. I mean, they're there for you. They're innovative. When we had to learn at home, within hours, we were set up and learned how to work from home. And doing tactile learning is not something you do from an iPad at home.
Right.
But yet we did it and we were successful with it. Another challenge that came up within our industry is along the time of this whole pandemic going on. Like this time, we also have Black Lives Movement going on, which is a huge thing. And then within our curriculum, we don't really have a large curriculum with textured hair. I would say we didn't. We currently now are in the process of having.
Beautiful.
And this really talking about people looking different. A lot of our Black and brown students, are watching videos of how-to videos. They're like, where am I at?
Yeah.
Where's the textured hair?
Yeah.
This is all, white people hair. So now we actually have a diversity and inclusion task force. And I'm very fortunate of my company, our company, that they asked me to be a part of that team. So now I'm on the team of the diversity and inclusion team. And now I get to go find Black and brown salon owners and talk about their story. I get to find Black and brown stylists and artists, and not only talk about how they got to where they're at, but what they're different. How is their difference? How was that for them in life?
Yeah.
That speaks to other people that see, oh, here's other people like me. This is finally, we're speaking to myself. So, this is so weird, not weird, talking about how diversity and inclusion works is that I'm right in the middle with the company I work with, working on a task force with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love, for people who are listening, again, just let me point out, when Black Lives Matter speaks, there's some of us that want to say, oh, they're just anarchists and they're just trying to overthrow and they're just trying to destroy and but here you have one of the most storied beauty schools in the nation. And they suddenly realize through the Black Lives Matter movement that their curriculum hasn't included enough curriculum around a textured hair for a Black person, that it really doesn't matter, and it doesn't want to ever give the message that it doesn't matter, because nobody that works at that school would say Black lives doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And yet the silent message is we're not learning how to deal with this clientele. And it's the beauty of their openness to the system to be able to say, hold it, we have to take a look at this, because here we're teaching people how to do this, and we're eliminating a whole segment of our society because we're not talking about it.
Yes.
And we are starting to talk about it. So how in your business, even though you believe every voice matters or Black Lives Matters, are you being inclusive of that in your languaging, in the way you're presenting, in the way you're training people, in the people you're training, in the staff that you have? How are you being inclusive in this thing? Beautiful.
I would say it comes back to speaking and communicating. So one challenge we've learned is that we would talk about Black Lives Matter. We would talk about it, would have a forum on it. But after we would have the forum on it and talk about it, we would just go back to class.
Wow.
And the students are like, no.
Wow.
How are we going to have this whole speech and not let us speak?
Yeah.
So
really what I hear you saying, if I can, is it isn't speaking about it, it's listening to it.
Listening. Yeah. It's providing the space. It's providing the space to allow people to communicate however they communicate. Yeah. And it's not providing the space of how am I going to reply back? What am I going to say back? How am I going to keep this under wraps? What if it gets out of hand? What if it goes into a direction I don't know? It's more of keeping that space of just keep it safe and let it happen naturally, organic. And usually if you let it happen naturally, organic, and let it come out, it will come back to a place of peace.
I love this. And, you know, I'm learning so much because even as I reflect back now on my saying that it's the space between the words in my book that's important, it's starting to become very clear what that space is in these conversations, holding the space for people to be able to have their voice, even if they think they're holding the space for other people to speak their voice, still holding that space. It's in that space that we're able to listen to other people say what they really need to say. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to unwrap some of the stuff around them to actually feel safe enough in that space to be themselves.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so space is one of the biggest things that's missing in our life. Space, we don't have space. We run from one thing to another, and we're frantically moving. Creating space, Todd spoke about it in meditation. You know, what is that meditation? It's just literally giving yourself the space to listen to the conversation that's happening in your own being.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I,
Yes.
I suck at lightning rounds, you can see, because we're supposed to go fast, but I don't do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's just more of like a lot. It's a round, but with no lightning.
that's okay. That's okay.
We're
It's
gonna
like
go for a round.
I like. It's more like shots. You know, sitting in a bar taking shots. That type of
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
Would you say you're a leader or a follower?
That's I I would say I'm a leader. I would say I'm a leader because oftentimes I'm not afraid to step into a situation, as of this situation.
Yeah.
I'm not really afraid to step into something that's unknown. And oftentimes, to be a leader, you have to step into situations that are unknown in order to figure out the path, in order for people to follow you.
Yeah.
I mean, I love being a follower also. I love to see someone trip and fall and realize, like, whoop, don't go that way. But sometimes you have to be the one. And for some reason, it's just my natural being to just do it, just a doer. And so therefore I end up being the leader, not as if I want to be number one, but it's like, okay, I'm going to take the fear and I'm going to plunge into it, and I'll let you know what happens on the other side, or maybe if things to change on your way
Yeah.
as you come along with me. Yeah.
When I was in seminary, we were given different tasks to do. And I went to my teacher one time and I said, nobody's doing this. And I just feel like, why do I have to do it? And he looked at me and he said, Danny, sometimes where there is no man, you have to be the man. You have to step
Yeah.
up and just do what has to be done. And hopefully through doing that, you will inspire other people through the way you do it to help you and participate and do it in their way too. Are you old enough to remember overhead projectors?
Oh yes. Oh
Okay.
yes.
Okay. I'd like to take a couple images of what I heard in this conversation and put them
Okay.
on plastic sheets if I could and ask you what you see.
Okay.
I want to take that first image of this dyslexic kid who didn't fit in, who felt like he always was whatever I can't get exactly the words used, but it wasn't not good enough. It was just something to that effect.
Hmm.
And then I want to take that, so that's one sheet that's on there. And I want to take this beautiful person that just spoke of how they are called to leadership. It's not that they want to be first, but they're just called to be a leader sometimes by being the person that has to step up when nobody else is stepping up. And I
Yeah.
want you to put them over each other. And I want you to tell me what you see, especially in the perspective of I can't apply for certain positions because I don't know that I'll be able to do those.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that image looks like that you see cast on the screen in front of you?
Well, I think is what it is it makes, it's like a two-piece photo, and both pieces need each other to make the image that you see.
Yeah.
So the image we see is, how can I say this? The image you see is a well-rounded image. It's a good image. Like, got it. It's all, cohesive. It's good. But it took every dynamic to make that one picture.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for the background of learning how to do things in a different way, learning how to do things unconventionally, if it wasn't for that, the leadership part probably would not look the way it looked. So therefore, in order to have this picture we see, it took both parts to make that picture.
So I love that. What a beautiful answer. And so now seeing the picture the way it is of this well-rounded leader, because he's managed to get through and see that the differences are not a detriment. They're just, that's caused him to create new ways of seeing things and innovative ways to seeing things. What now would prevent you from feeling like you could have any job in the world that you wanted, knowing that this is the picture on the screen in front of you?
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't. At this
Beautiful.
point, at this point in my life, I learned, but it took a while to get to that point.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yes, but at this point, and I think that's what brings in the leadership, is that point is that you've been through a lot, and you can keep going through even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening who are still going through a lot, feel in this conversation, in Todd's adherence to finding the way to do it, even if it has to be different than the way everybody else does it, to be your stone of courage that you can take with you in your pocket, to know that you will get to that place at one point if you're not already there, and to get faith from that and gain hope from that. Um, because the image that I see on the overhead projector that I'm looking at is a very well-rounded individual that has tons of inner power and strength, and that, what a beautiful image to portray to the world around you. Last
Thank you.
question. You're quite welcome. Last
And
question.
I have to say thank you for asking me if am I old enough to know what an overhead projector is. That was a compliment. Thank you.
I often have to explain it to people.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah.
Last question in the quote unquote lightning round. Do you think people are more similar than they are different, or more different than they are similar?
Oh, they're so similar. People are so similar. So similar to the point that people don't realize they're so similar because we think we're so different.
Yeah.
We spend so much time in our head how different we are to realize how similar we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we all would realize, we have more in common than not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting, the things that pop up in these conversations, the fit in or different, the similar or not similar, this thought that we have to fit into boxes or not be in boxes. It's just such an interesting way of seeing. And when you put them all on this overhead projector of those plastic sheets, some of the perspectives we carry throughout our life just don't make sense anymore.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
just parts of a mosaic of the totality of what that image is. That's why I like an overhead projector so much, because one image goes on top of another, goes on top of another, and they're all plastic sheets, and together they create a wholer image than we see when we look at any of the individual ones.
Yes.
Do you think the world speaks to us? Do you think things speak to us like people? Do you think our workplace speaks to us? Do you think our bodies speak to us? Do you think our environment speaks to us?
Yes. I definitely believe there's energy. Definitely believe we all have energy. We all pick up on energy. We all give energy. So yes, there are vibes. There are energy. Yes.
So if you were to look out at the world, we've had quite a few years now, not quite a few, but we've had a few years where we had a Me Too movement that almost seems like it's gotten lost in the pandemic, and that's gotten lost almost in the Black Lives Matter. But, we're still experiencing all those things. What do you think the world is trying to say to us now?
I think the world is trying to say is that we need inclusion. We need inclusion. I think the world's been saying it for the longest time. It's just the way we've been listening or not listening to it.
Yeah.
It's just that there's been more and more of it. We have different resources now, such as social media. We have things that people can actually take a video of, put it on social media, and it's out to the world to see. So the world has been saying it. It's just that we have different platforms of how to project it. We have a different overhead projector.
Yeah.
So therefore, since we have a different overhead projector, the image is a little bit different and more broadly seen than what the world has been saying for the longest time. I mean, back in the day when women couldn't vote, when women finally could vote, that was a huge movement. But we don't think about that now because that was such a time ago. Women being in power, women being in office, women holding high executives. We don't think anything of, well, I won't say we, a lot of us don't think anything of it because it's what's happened. It's just there's more of it. We have a different perspective.
I was having almost exactly this conversation with my wife last night over dinner. And we were
Yes.
talking about this whole binary and transgender, and there's so many different. My stepson was applying for college, and under sex, it used to be male female. Now there's like 12 categories that you have to pick
Yes.
from, right? And they were sort of questioning why that is and where it's going. And I said, well, just imagine what it was like for women when they didn't have vote, or when they didn't have rights, or for blacks when they didn't have any rights. We're in the beginning stages of a new way of seeing the world, and the openness that we show to people of all genders, all types, all definitions is really important for us to get our hands around, so that would be when so that people don't feel excluded, that they feel included. One of the reasons why I love the image of a mosaic is because it includes all of those different pieces into this artistry that's called the mosaic.
Mm-hmm.
Todd, thank you for your time, first of all. But if you had one thing that you could say to people, you've said so much already. But if you had one message that you wanted to give to people that they would hear right now, what is it you would say?
I would say believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. No matter what happens, what you go through, whatever, believe in yourself.
Wow.
Because yourself is always there with you.
Yeah. Wherever you go, there you are, right?
There you are.
I love
Yeah.
that. Um, Thank you so much for taking this time. Thank you so much for being so open, and for appearing and coming here so vulnerably and raw, and um, sharing yourself with us, and sharing your thoughts,
Sure.
and sharing what you do. Um,
Sure.
is there a way for people to get in touch with you if they chose to?
That's what I was just trying to get out. I was just trying, yeah. Yes, social media. You can find me Facebook, Todd Faulk, Facebook, Instagram. I'm a spiritual gangster 75 on Instagram. You can find me there. Please reach out to me. I love to talk. I love to have conversations. And anything you might have, whatever it is, just reach out. I would love to have a conversation.
So please be sure to send me your social media links, and also please send me a headshot so I can put it on the cover. We'll get this out in the
Absolutely.
next day or two. Um, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. For those people who listen to the show, I want to thank you so much for listening to it. If you like what you heard today, today's show is packed with stuff. And if you like what you heard, listen to it again, and also share it around with friends. The way anything grows is when we share what we like with the people we like, and we introduce new things to people that haven't had the opportunity to hear them. So if you like what you're hearing here, please share it around. If you don't, no problem, do it. The energy will grow it in the way it needs to grow. It's not about having big numbers or all that. It's about sharing beautiful ideas with beautiful people. um, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for coming by again and again and again to hear these shows. And for those of you who want to have a conversation, reach out to me. I'm here. I would love to. This started as 50 conversations with 50 strangers. We're now at like 66, and it's been 45 days. So within 45 days, I've had 66 conversations, and I just want to continue to grow that so that those numbers are thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions. Um, Todd, is there one last thing you want to say before we go?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I think we'll leave it at that. And that's, yeah. And I
Okay.
appreciate your time. Really, really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I look forward to having conversations with anyone out there that wants to have a conversation. Please reach out. I'll give my information as well.
Perfect. So for those of you listening, stranger things have happened than walking into a room of someone you don't know
Mm-hmm.
and leave as a strangers and leaving as friends. Don't be strangers to each other. I want to invite all of you to reach out and just find someone you don't know and just ask them, how are you doing? Not with the thought of fixing them, changing them, helping them, but just with the thought of listening to them and letting them be a platform for them to be heard. Until the next conversation, I want to thank you, and we'll see you again. Don't be strangers. Ciao.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.